And I was telling the crew on Saturday night, I had a chance to eat dinner with C.J. Daniels, who is the newest commit as a wide receiver to LSU. His dad and C.J. were in town getting moved in, and they watched the show. They reached out last week, said they were coming in, would love to meet. We ended up going to Phil's Oyster Bar on Saturday night. Saw Joe Sloan there, saw Scott Woodward there. It was a who's who of LSU as those guys came over to the table and talked to CJ and his dad. They had met them, obviously. Joe Sloan was one of the lead recruiters for CJ, and then Scott Woodward had met CJ on his official visit to LSU while they were going through some of the meetings and some of the visit responsibilities. But CJ, a great dude. Really looking forward to LSU. LSU was able to beat out Texas and Florida for CJ as he was talking about some of the perks of the visit of what made LSU stand out. And obviously, when you're talking about the history at wide receiver, the recent history at wide receiver that LSU is able to sell and able to put and show to anybody who comes in. Obviously stood out to CJ when you're talking about Cortez Hankton and what he's been able to do as far as the development goes at wide receiver. That was an enormous piece of being able to choose LSU over Texas and Florida. And then obviously, coming in with a quarterback. You got a guy in Garrett Nussmeier who, for the most part is proven. I don't think that there is a lot of question marks to Nussmeier. Now, there is some overriding questions of, will he be able to do it from start to finish? Can he do it all season long? Can he be the guy every single game? Those are some of the things that have not yet quite been answered from Nussmeier's standpoint, but the small sample size that you've seen of him, I think he feels, after talking to him, he kind of feels like we all do, right? The future's bright. You feel confident. You feel like LSU's got a real competent quarterback that you can go out there and win with. And so it was cool to, kind of get some point of view from somebody who has been here recently, right? With all the new turnover at LSU and kind of how it's, what's been the message. As far as all this turnover has been concerned. And, Brian Kelly seems to have been handling the communication on this to recruits flawlessly. C.J. Daniels said that at no point did he ever feel, very insecure or unconfident or, at least confused about what was going on.
Like the direction.
He said LSU the whole time was, keeping them up to date. A lot of the stuff that we were talking about, leading up to signing day. We may not know the entire story of what the plan is, but the people that need to know.
Right.
And
that's how it should be.
Yeah.
When we go back to this all the time, but it used to not be the loose lips sink ships, I believe what is the phrase, and that used to be LSU for a long time, where it was kind of anybody who was anybody could get some information about the LSU football program, and now it's kind of been kept in-house, and that's been the thing that is kind of driven the fan base mad in a sense, where give us some information. When's Corey Raymond going to be hired? When, announce it. It's like, give them time to operate because they're doing all of this behind lock key because you don't want things leaked out anymore. And so you're seeing that from the top down, they're running the organization the way that it's supposed to be done. And I feel like in CJ's case, do you feel like there's a little bit of – it feels like he's going to play, obviously. Like he's going to find a spot. Do you get any Jonathan Giles vibes from the fan base around where they're like, oh, we haven't added somebody that was supposed to be a premier playmaker at wide receiver, whether it be through as a transfer or transfer portal guy, since I would imagine Jonathan Giles, but that might be partly on O. By giving him 7.
That might have been just a bad evaluation.
Yeah, that was just a bad
evaluation. He played with Patrick Mahomes in Texas Tech where he put up, 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns.
But I think you should still, you watch the tape.
They put a lot on his
tell, this guy's playing a system.
Yeah.
With Patrick Mahomes.
I think the thing that stood out for C.J. Daniels was that he produced with Hugh Freeze. He produced without Hugh Freeze.
Yeah.
He was a player in Hugh Freeze's system. He was a player without Hugh Freeze there calling the plays. Now, they were still running the majority and, what Hugh Freeze had installed. But, still, you take it. I'd imagine that it's a lot like what Dennis Allen is doing in New Orleans. He tried to keep everybody in place, keep Sean Payton's offense in place. He didn't have Sean Payton.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you take Hugh Freeze out of the mix and you try to keep Hugh Freeze's offense. Well, the production really didn't fall off. And, you know, C.J. Daniels was one of those guys. Yeah, he actually got better. He got better.
Well, and in that Liberty offense, I think it's aside from the military schools, it's the team that runs the ball the most, that get it out of their system. Like, so felt very much like, I guess, Malachi Dupree whenever he was at John Curtis. Like, you have one threat, so he was obviously had eyes on him all the time, and whenever they needed to take a shot, he was their guy. But to have an offense where you're prolifically trying to run the football and to still be able to have production from the wide receiver position speaks to his talent.
And, you know, I mean, they bring in Daniels, I believe, for the veteran presence in the room, right? I mean, there's still Kyron Lacy is there, and I think there is a feeling around Lacy that they want him to push to be for the number one target, you know, to be the number one guy here. I still believe internally there's some questions that need to be answered by Lacy on whether or not he can do that week in, week out. Look,
right.
Can Lacy do that, you know,
consistently?
Right. I mean, can he do it? Yeah, he can do it.
I was going to say, talent-wise, yes.
Have we seen him do it consistently? No. Has he had an opportunity to be that consistent? Probably not. When you're playing, you know, alongside Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, those guys are going to get the majority of the looks. But Lacy at times has shown he can do it. He had a huge Auburn game this year when you think about the numbers and the way he played there. But he's also had some huge drops, right? I mean, like, you can point directly to that drop. Florida State, he had some drops last season in the bowl game that stand out. So for him coming back for a third year in LSU system, I think the questions he needs to have answered are, can he consistently week in, week out be the target that people are going to focus their attention on and try and take him out of the game? I mean, they're going to really, you know, I mean, defenses are really going to try and take him away, at least for the start of the year, because he's the one that feels like is going to be the security blanket for Nussmeier. They worked the longest together. They've been together, you know, in the practice field. They are secure with one another when you talk about the chemistry and working alongside one another. So, you know, I think that there is an opportunity at wide receiver for, you know, all these guys that are coming back, you know, the Shelton Sampson, the Kyle Parkers,
that's the one.
That's the one.
To anybody coming in, like a C.J. Daniels and
Aaron Anderson.
What's my guy's name at Mississippi State?
Xavier Thomas.
Xavier Thomas. You know, I mean, these guys, I think when you throw it up in the air,
and don't forget about
it'll be interesting to how it shakes out.
Don't forget about Mason Taylor, who obviously wasn't utilized as much this year. I think he was playing a little banged up, but with Nussmeier and his play style, like Jaden Daniels Jaden Daniels could just take off. He didn't have to really use him as that dump down, whatever, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 8, have to have it. Like, Jaden could do that with his legs. With Garrett Nussmeier, who's not a statue, but I think you'll see Mason Taylor come into play a lot more, where it's check 1, check 2, Mason Taylor, get it out of my hands.
You saw it in the bowl game.
Yeah, he had 86 yards.
And for context, Kyron Lacy had more yards per catch than Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas this season.
Wow.
18.6.
I guess that has to factor in the amount of
numbers,
catches,
right?
Yeah.
But
still,
but he was, in my opinion, he was a great third wide receiver in this offense. I really did. I mean, we talked about, you know, in the middle of the year, who was going to step up, who was going to be the guy to take the pressure off of Neighbors, off of Thomas, and ultimately, those guys were so good that defenses they couldn't plan to stop them both. You may be able to neutralize one of those guys for parts of the game, but they were so good. I mean, you're talking about 2 first-round picks. I mean, guys that potentially could be number 1 targets in the NFL in the next 3 years. I mean, Thomas and Neighbors could be number 1 targets on their teams in the next 3 seasons. LSU had both of them as veterans on the same field in the same offense. And for Kyron Lacy, I think, you know, I mean, he was able to get on the field, stay on the field, and the things that kept him on the field were not necessarily
the flash.
Yeah, well, when the things that jump out, you know what I mean? But when NFL scouts, coaches see the film on Lacy's a pro. Like, there's no doubt about it. I mean, he may be, like, today, if he came out, he'd probably be a 5th to 7th round pick.
Yeah.
But make no mistake, he's a pro physically, from a vital standpoint, the way he tests.
Twitchy
and then
athlete.
you turn to film, I mean, he's as physical of a wide receiver as LSU has had, I mean, in a while. I mean, he's constantly on the ground down the field blocking. I mean, like, he is in fist fights 15, 20 yards off of the line of scrimmage and doesn't stop until the whistle. I mean, the guy is, from a standpoint of a pro scout looking at him and said, hey, look, will he be in our wide receiver rotation? Probably not. Can he cover kicks and cover punts?
Absolutely.
And be on the kickoff return team and, be a guy that can run and cover and tackle and be physical? Absolutely.
And the funniest thing about Kenlee Lacy is what you want him to do is the one thing that he struggles with. Like, he's a possession receiver that can find his way to get open and be open on crucial downs, but then he has a little bit of the oopsie daisies.
He gets the yip sometimes.
Yeah, and I think he's just trying to go a little too fast. Like, it's him cutting before he has the ball. And all these things are fixable, but I mean, if you polled any LSU fan, like, what's the first thing when you think of Kenlee Lacy, they would say drops.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if it's happened, but that's just because everybody around you was so sure-handed. You were playing with two first-round picks, so somebody's got to be the odd man out in terms of, like, okay, he's the third wide receiver. But I do think that if you can put him in that, I'm interested to see where they line him up. If he's going to be on the outside or if they keep him in that kind of inside role.
I would think that they would play him on the outside with the inside guys that they have.
Yeah,
I think there's better. You've got better options inside. I think both Anderson and Parker are inside guys.
Yeah,
I mean, I love
Parker. Could play outside too.
He
though.
can play outside, but
like
I love him inside.
Oh, nice.
Right? I mean, like, it's from a size standpoint.
Pause.
That's getting worse. But I mean, Kyle Parker probably, if you had to like comp him, it feels like a little Malik, like a little bit like Malik Neighbors. Yeah, like I'm saying, like physically the way he looks. You haven't seen him play yet, but I mean, he was the first guy that after the bowl game and everything, he was in the lab again, and I think it was Cortez Hankton that quote tweeted him being like, "Some guys want to hit the portal because they don't get playing time, and some guys want to go back to work." And it was Kyle Parker working like on route running and all these things at a camp in Texas.
Yeah.
So, like, you know what you're getting, and somebody that's hungry to be able to play some football. Obviously, and even in the Aaron Anderson case, like, you saw flashes, but I think that's the guy that you have to kind of work in. Like, you don't know how he's got so much talent that you just kind of have to harness it and figure out how to use it, what's best for him and what's best for the football team. But they're going to be like, for as much as you lost outside, they're going to be loaded at
Chris
wide
Hilton.
receiver.
They
Yeah,
love Chris Hilton.
Yeah, Chris Hilton.
I mean, like, they are talking behind the scenes of Chris Hilton like he might be the man this year.
he's got to stay healthy.
Yeah, he stays healthy.
You saw him in the bowl game.
People forget Chris Hilton was rated over like Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors coming out of high school. So he has the talent. It's just
That's what I'm saying. You see flashes from him all the time, and it's just put it all together.